Hey, what's up everybody? Tarafdar back with a brand new video. So today I wanted to just record a quick video for you guys here at the park. Hopefully, the wind is not causing much of an issue. You can hear me very clearly and very concisely. I'm actually using my microphone where I actually have it right here, and hopefully the wind is being blocked by the little dead kitten that's installed on it. So what's the discussion about today? Well, look, last time we talked about exactly in the same park, we talked about a couple of things. Last time we had discussed something very unique. We talked about this whole new unified credit system and what would happen if this credit system were to step in or kick in, and what are some of the things that we have to be cautious with if that were be the case. So today I want to really give you some preparation steps actually, and some of the things that you can prepare ahead of schedule, and really give you some boost in reference to some pointers on exactly what you can do step by step to prepare before the storm. So the very first thing I always ask you guys to do is bankable relationships. We talked about this a couple of times already, and I cannot keep emphasizing on this, but let's talk specifically with the equation of this whole aspect of bankable relationships. What are a couple of things that you need to do? How do you establish these bankable relationships that I keep mentioning to you guys? What are some of the key components of those bankable relationships, and what are some of the steps that you need to take initially in order to optimize and really take that bankable relationship conversation to the next level? The first things first is you ought to understand very specifically that bankable relationships, when I say bankable relationships, I mean look at your existing creditors. If you don't have existing creditors, start to dig deeper into some accounts that you can open that are not overly complicated, that are not difficult, but yet achievable. And at the same, if you do so, what happens is you actually put yourself in a perspective of being more favored in the lending landscape. So think of the moves that you make when it comes to these bankable relationships in a perspective of the landscape of lending and underwriting. What are some of the moves that you're making in a very affordable manner? And when I say affordable manner, I mean you have to find accounts that you can put together, and you have to be able to say, look, I can support myself with these type of accounts, financially speaking. A lot of people go up and beyond, and they don't have the financial means or capacity to be able to support themselves. And honestly, that's a huge problem. When you're doing these type of things, you have to learn how to put yourself in a perspective where, okay, well, look, I got a couple of accounts here, and I think I can support myself with this infrastructure. It's not very expensive, and it's quite easy to do. A good example of this is, look, if you got a couple of secured accounts, I discussed in the last one about what to do and how to do so, is if you were to spend so much money on these authorized users, primary trade lines, and so on and so forth, you guys are still taking a risk in the sense of, look, will this help me in my underwriting goals and journey? And the likelihood of that being the case is very minimal, right? I discussed with you guys about what some of the changes that are happening with this whole credit infrastructure and the landscape of these primary trade lines that are what we call non-essential primaries. Non-essential primaries are accounts that basically you cannot use outside. You cannot use in regular stores, online, etc., unless otherwise it's their very specific own store that's issuing the credit to you. There's a risk in that. We talked about the risk in that in a sense that these type of creditors don't last too long. And if they do, they have a good streak of a couple of years and they get knocked out after. When they get knocked out, what ends up happening is now you're kind of jeopardizing your financial well-being, because all this credit, accounts that you had that were actually tying in with your credit score are now taking a hit, are coming off the credit accounts, your payment history is, being depleted. And so are these account utilization factors. When that happens, what do you have? You don't have anything left. You don't have anything that you can fall back on and say, well, you know what? I've taken my time to build proper credit. And all of a sudden, all the stuff that you're taking your time on building your proper credit is gone, right? Because you haven't established these essential primaries, which you would have gone out to establish yourself with financial institutions that A, you already had in your record in the past, or B, in some capacity you worked with those institutions in the past but no longer have the ability to do so because you defaulted on them in the past. Link yourself through a process of organization where you can start paying a little bit at a time, but budget yourself accordingly to where what you would have spent on authorized users and primary trade lines. Let's give it an example. For example, you have $3,000 of a budget. You're wondering yourself, can I buy an authorized user that'll give me $40,000-$50,000 in credit limits just to show up on my credit report for 60 days? The problem with that is, you don't have anything else outside of that small authorized user. And if you don't enforce a certain strategy in which you don't take this authorized user account off, and let's say it stays for 60 days, but then it comes off, what exactly do you have? Right? You don't have anything else. You don't have anything of substance that it can last. It'll remain. It'll help you, get to a position where, okay, well, now this authorized user account is helping me grow. It's helping me position myself, and it's going to stay in your credit report. The likelihood of that authorized user falling off in 60 days is very, very high. So you would have spent like $3,000, let's assume, on this situation, but then this $3,000 spent on that situation doesn't last very long. Whereas on the other side, if you were to take that $3,000, split it into two, and you put it into two different accounts uniquely, let's assume that first account was a primary that you would have control over. It's a secured account. It's $1,000. Maybe the other one is, let's say, another $1,500, and a third one, maybe it's $500, right? So you have three different accounts that you've set up, and all of a sudden what happens is this $3,000 is actually going towards credit building, even though it's not very high limits, and even though it's not gonna, it's not a shortcut of 60 days or whatever the case to give you a gradual boost of your credit score. It's a permanent placement as long as you know how to handle those bankable relationships efficiently. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is work on things that are going to be consistent, work on things that are going to last, things that's going to give you a sense of, long-term appreciation, in a sense of, okay, well, look, I have all these accounts I've set up. I have 3 primary accounts that are secured, albeit, but I have the opportunity to grow those accounts over time because I'll be working those credit muscles and those credit relationships. Really, that's the perspective that you want to aim for, and you want to aspire to do such things, because mathematically speaking, let's assume the unified credit system were to pick up, and let's say all these type of non-essential primary accounts that we've seen recently and historically speaking, they're starting to fall off, and then we're having issues with them sticking. So if they're starting to fall off and we're having issues with them sticking, what's happening? The only obvious thing that we have to observe is that, they're not going to last. And if they don't last, that means that we're basically stuck, because now you don't have anything substantial in your credit reports that would favor underwriting of any capacity, whether you want to get a home, a mortgage, you want to get rent, or you want to go for funding because you want to start a business, or perhaps support the existing business that you have because your subsidies and support stopped by the government side. All these type of things require a little bit of thinking outside the realm of the possibility of non-essential primary trade lines. So regardless of unified system or not, you have to concentrate on bankable relationships. You have to have control over the relationships that you have, because if you don't, then those accounts can come off, and so on and so forth. With institutional accounts, such as banks, the tier one ones that are safe, that are secure, that are long-term, that have stringent, underwriting policies or certain procedures, I think what happens is those are the type of accounts you want to aspire to have in your profile anyways, in your credit reports. Because at the end of the day, the more of those you have, the more secure your profile looks, and the more likelihood you're going to get more funding. So one of the biggest things that we have to realize also in the future is underwriters and creditors can consider your non-essential primaries as a means of, it's not very safe and it's very high risk, right? One of these things is we want to consider, because the reason why, it's because anybody gets approved of them, anyone could get approved of that. And therefore the consideration of that account in terms of its feasibility, financially speaking, it's not very high. So if it's not very high, what happens is this account doesn't really carry much weight underwriting wise. So perhaps if you had a $5,000 non-essential primary and you go for funding, chances are you're probably not going to get more than $1,000 or $2,000 in unsecured funding from a major institution. Whereas if you had $1,000 to $1,500 secured primary essential trade line that you've taken your time to invest in and built that relationship over time, built that payment history, and just continue, working that credit utilization with them, the chances of you getting $3,000 to $5,000 is a lot more likely. So the balance there is based on, look, you would have spent money on AUs and primaries anyways. Might as well invest that towards essential primaries that A, you have control over, and B, you're more likely to get some funding if you were to focus on that area, right? So that's one of those things I really want to emphasize with you guys, and want to help you really, stick to that principle in the game, because it'll help you. It'll help you long term. It'll help you with the objective of really, working that strategy. It'll help you with that strategy in reference to, getting to know your creditors a bit better. The creditors will get to know you. You guys will be able to enhance your payment over time. So that's just one of those things that I always encourage you guys to do for the longest time. This channel was designed to help you with those specific principles so that you can learn to leverage A, your credit, and B, to increase those bankable relationships, the meaning behind those bankable relationships. So the more you do these type of things, the better position you'll be in. So let's put all that aside. A couple of things you also want to consider with your creditors is, let's assume that with your creditors, you guys have a relationship for like 6-7 months, right? Over time, that creditor has a profile on you. And what happens is, even let's say there was no credit bureaus left and it's a unified system and the whole system just goes down and it's a huge debacle, what happens? Well, A, the creditor has your history with them, so the payment history enhanced and you have certain things that are already happening there. And B, the likelihood of you getting more funding down the road is increased because the creditor already has historical reports about you and your performance with them, and therefore that can be complemented with other institutions like brother sister institutions that they have relationships with, to work with internal databases that are outside of the realm of public, such as the credit reporting agencies or whatever unified system Joe Biden proposes. So there's a whole lot of things that we have to consider, and the reason why you want to stick to those principles and the guidelines with institutional funding and tier 1 creditors that are essential and they have a lot more weight, and their underwriting capacity enhances your ability to borrow more, given that those creditors are actually on your credit reports. So that's just something I want to leave you guys off with, and I want you to really think and ponder on this, because this whole game and the debacle of non-essential primaries and what's happening and the shortcuts and the AUs and the money you guys are investing and spending on these type of things, you have to learn to relocate that liquidity into the appropriate areas that you actually have control over those relationships. And even though it's safe and steady and it takes a little bit longer, you're not going to fall back. You're not going to have to run around like a headless chicken and your tail between your legs because you don't know what to do next. You actually have control over the relationships, A, and B, you'll actually be able to get a lot more funding if you stick to those guiding principles. So I don't want to keep you guys too long and drag this out for another 20-30 minutes, because I promise you we can keep going all day, but I don't want you guys to get bored. I want you to apply this knowledge. I want you to take the information to heart. I want you to write the information that I told you down and understand on how to allocate that liquidity in your budget that you have that would have been set aside for AUs and primaries and so on and so forth, and use it towards things that you have control over. Financial budgeting and restructuring requires discipline, and if you want more funding, then you have to stick to those guidelines and principles. So I just wanted to leave you guys off with that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you had, and if you really liked it, don't forget to destroy that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new to this channel. Don't forget to turn the notifications on to all, so every time videos like these do come up, you'll be the first to know. And if you're interested in upgrading your knowledge and leveling up your financial IQ, there's a channel membership for YouTube here, right below the subscribe, or right near the subscribe button below. Click on that, join in. It's got a couple of videos inside that I'm pretty sure you can benefit from. In addition to that, if you want to access my Ultimate Personal Credit Mastery 3.0 to learn about personal credit and take your knowledge to the next level when it comes to personal credit and finance, I encourage you to go check out that course. And with that said, this is definitely your guide and mentor, Ali Tarafdar. Catch you guys on the next one. Bye for now.